I am ranked number one. One! That means I'm the best.
Joshua weighed in a pound lighter than Charles Martin. 17 stone 6 to Charles Martin 17 stone 7. Martin comes in 4.5 pounds lighter than he did against Glashgoff and 2.5 pounds lighter than he did against Vicente Sandez. Joshua hasn't been this light since the Michael Sprott fight in 2014. So I was talking to EJ recently, and he was theorizing from the York Hall workout that Martin was looking to move around and give AJ some angles with some movement. Because in his workout, he was moving around quite a bit. He was. But will that be the case now if he's a pound heavier? Who will be the fleeter of foot? I think that's going to be important in the early rounds. Is Martin actually going to try and push AJ back? Which I believe gives you a very good chance of beating AJ. Now, Dillian caught AJ with a great left hook and rocked AJ back into the ropes. But nobody has actually physically gained an advantage over Anthony Joshua for a single second of any of his fights. Nobody. Nobody's looked capable of pushing him back or out-muscling him, Dillian included. Charles Martin looked a little rattled at the weigh-in. He looked a little rattled. The crowd were booing him. He said nothing phases him. But the facts are he's never been in this position here before. Anthony Joshua, this is his manor, as we say in the UK. This is O2 Arena is his manor, mate. This is where Anthony Joshua fights. This is where he knocks people out. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's all over for Charles Martin. A lot of fighters suffer nerves and, they've got to conquer them and they go on to win. But he did look nervous. He was moving about a lot. It seemed like he was talking a lot. And, that's what I saw. He started touching his dreads. Maybe he's just amped up. Joshua's physique is just phenomenal. Just like he looks like a superhero. Charles Martin looks just like an ordinary dude. Like if you saw him in the gym, you might even tell him, yo, you can do these exercises to work on your pec muscles. Because he doesn't have the most obvious elite athlete's physique. He just doesn't. So despite having a pound weight advantage, Joshua is still an inch taller than him and has a 2-inch reach advantage. And the pound weight advantage, if you're just looking at it from an aesthetic conversation point, you could say that pound advantage hasn't gone in the right place for Charles Martin. It's gone to his belly or somewhere where you wouldn't desire having that extra pound. Because despite the pound weight advantage, Joshua just looks a heck of a lot bigger. A whole lot bigger. And, boxers are humans, even though they go through a totally different regime day to day than we do. I believe a lot of the boxers look at other boxers, and they might see that physique is just in shape. And I think sometimes it does have an effect on opponents. I do. I really do. I think Joshua does have the kind of body type that he could impose his will on his opponent, and in turn, self-doubt will creep into the psychology of his opponent. Now, I believe that. Now, you might not believe that, but I do. Not all the time, but I believe it happens more often than we would probably want to believe, especially in the heavyweight division. I remember watching Frank Bruno and Bone Crusher Smith. It was a preview of their fight on BBC. Could have been on Grandstand. But they had Bone Crusher Smith in the studio. Bruno wasn't there. And they put this video on where they showed Bruno's workouts. And Bruno had that Anthony Joshua physique, but Joshua was even bigger. He's taller. And he was doing weights and he was doing all this stuff here. And they showed his knockouts. And Bone Crusher at the time used to do this kind of wide-eyed stare that they used to make black men do in them old films where they'd be trying to rape white women or something like that. Just some real fucked up stereotypical portrayals. He used to do that wide-eyed stare. And he was looking at Bruno, and Harry was saying, no, the physique is extraordinary and the power and what. And Bone Crusher was like, whoa. And he said, I've got to knock this. And he sort of caught himself. He didn't say mofo. I've got to knock this guy out. It's like it hit him all of a sudden that this is serious, because he would have caught wind of what Bruno's record was when he was in America, before he travelled to the UK. It was all knockouts. Now, I can't remember the number of fights he had when he fought Bone Crusher, but it was all knockouts. So he knew, oh, this guy's a pure knockout. But it's when he saw the visual image of Bruno doing them workouts and knocking people out, it hit him. And he did go on to upset Bruno, the man from North Carolina. He did go on to upset Bruno. He knocked him out in the last round. He was losing every round, practically. Bruno was out jabbing him, and Smith caught him with a left hook. He jumped into the punch, and he finished him off. 10th and final round. Before the Bone Crusher fight, Frank Bruno fought somebody named Jumbo Cummings from America. He drew with Joe Frazier in Joe Frazier's last fight, a 10-rounder. Now, Jumbo Cummings did a bid in prison, and he was a hardened inmate who I believe was setting weightlifting records in the prison. And when he came over here, the press kept making a big deal of his physique, because he was the only heavyweight that Bruno squared up to, where the physical dimensions were at a similarity. They weren't talking about his boxing ability. They spoke about the Frazier draw, but no, everyone knew that Joe was a little past his prime when the fight took place, blind in one eye. They weren't talking nothing about what Jumbo Cummings could do in the ring. Physicality. Look at the shoulders, the arms, the chest. He imposed himself on the press and on Harry Carpenter. Harry Carpenter spoke about it a whole lot. He imposed his will on them, and probably on Bruno. Bruno probably heard what the press was saying and read a few of the clippings, perhaps. He probably heard. And let me tell you this, man. I believe it was in the second round. Jumbo Cummings landed, I think it was a right hand, I can't remember what it was, on Bruno's chin at the end of the round. And Bruno froze. Right on the bell. Right on the bell, man. Froze. Rocked to his boots. A right-hander. And the referee sort of steadied him. And Terry Lawless ran in the ring and assisted Bruno to his stool. And Bruno came back and stopped Cummings in the middle rounds. Them were the days. Having a good physique, an aesthetically good physique as a boxer, is one of the greatest advertisements for the sport. That physique signifies good health, good conditioning, a gladiator. And that's never going to leave a certain part in your subconscious. It's never going to leave. That's always going to be there. But at the same time, most of us know it's not a bodybuilding contest. We know this. We know this. It's a fight. We've seen fighters who haven't had great physiques beat guys with great physiques. Witherspoon versus Bruno was one instance. Larry Holmes edged out Norton. And there's more, but, I haven't done my, I normally do the big long list. I haven't done one. It doesn't matter whether it's for the spectator or the fighter. It's hard to get the psychology of looking at somebody who's looking really primed and ripped and shredded. That, that's a serious fighter. No matter what you want to say, that it's not a bodybuilding contest. It really isn't. And Joshua has 15 KOs in 15 fights, so that means he can hit. He's taking everybody out. But then again, Wilder has an even better KO percentage and didn't go the distance till he fought Stavern, went into 30-odd fights. But for some reason, there's this perception that, I've heard a lot of people saying, that Joshua would smash Wilder, he'd kill Wilder. Wilder can't beat Klitschko, Povetkin, Fury, no top heavyweights. He doesn't have a chance against none of them. And Joshua's going to become this great champion. Nobody was saying Wilder was going to become no champion after 15 fights. They wasn't. In fact, after each time he knocked someone out, they seem to find more reasons why he's going to lose his next fight. And he's 6'7", but he doesn't have that bodybuilder-esque physique that Joshua has. He has that lean, athletic muscle. And in terms of comparing them, from going amateur to pro, okay, Wilder didn't win the gold medal. He did win the bronze. He's the last guy to medal for America. And he just hasn't got the bulk of America behind him. You know, America always supported their heavyweight champions previously. They didn't like Larry Holmes too much. They never took to, because he came post-Ali era. And he had a big mouth. So they didn't really like Holmes like that. And he was always struggling for recognition. Tyson, America, you know, was definitely infatuated with Tyson. It was love-hate at times, but, you know. But I think Martin, you know, to a degree, has been obscure to the American public, just like Wilder has. Martin has a high KO percentage. But why isn't he he's not looked on as an intimidating presence? It's the physique. Like Liston and Tyson, they weren't shredded per se, but they did have intimidating physiques. Bulky, muscular, big necks, whatever. Liston had massive fists and he had big, big arms. He had a massive reach. Was it 84, 85 inch reach or something like that? Big, long, dirty reach. You have to be a supreme boxer to get over the physical intimidation aspect of boxing. You mentally have to be right. But look, we appreciate boxing is an art. You got the purist angle, puncher angle, slugging angle, the sweet science. Yes, fair enough. It's not bodybuilding. But you can't ignore body language. You just can't ignore body language. You know? As just a part of the equation, not the full equation, as just a part. Like they used to make them power suits back in the day, where it make your shoulders look wider. So when you go into a business meeting, you have more of a presence. I don't know if they still do them, but they did used to do them. You can't ignore that aspect of it, you know. It's not a one-way thing. It's a two-way debate, you know. If you can really box, you can really box. You'll beat Body Beautiful. You'll beat him, no problem. Like I saw one guy, a powerlifter, quite a famous powerlifter. I don't know his name because I don't really follow powerlifting. It was on Facebook. And he was sparring with this guy who didn't even look like a full heavyweight. And like he was just struggling. The powerlifter struggled. And when the session finished, he was in bad shape. He was so tired. He was taking a lot of punishment. You know, you can't just walk into a ring and expect to have results because you're extremely physically strong at lifting things. You can't, you know. It's like, you know, sometimes I catch the world's strongest man where they do all them different events. And is it Mariusz Pudzianowski, a Polish guy, I think. He was the strongest man in the world, and his physique was just like stupid, crazy physique, stupid muscles. He tried some variation of mixed martial arts, and I saw it on YouTube. And, you know, I can't remember if it was a draw or if he won, but, yo, he was struggling towards the end, man. He was struggling. And I don't think he was fighting an elite guy. So I'm not saying it's a one-way topic. And let's just talk about the gambling fraternity and those who are going to put bets on the fight. A lot of them are basically going to be looking at Joshua's physique. Not solely, but a lot of it is going to be based on that. How do you beat a guy like that? Look, he's got a perfect body, you know, like, I mean, he looks like he should be a superstar. The good-looking dude, the Olympic gold medalist. Although, you know, you could look into the history of his Olympic campaign and a few discrepancies, maybe. The only fight I believe he lost, in my opinion, was to the Cuban. I only believe he lost that one. The guy in the final, he beat him. He definitely beat him. He dragged it out of himself and he beat him. He won the final fair and square. The Cuban, Erislandy Savon, Cuban won that. Charles Martin, not a whole load of body fat like people are saying, but, you know, there's body fat there, and it's not the best heavyweight boxing physique we've seen. It's not a Weaver. It's not a Joshua. It's not a Norton. It's not an Iberbushi, a Tyson, a Holyfield. No, it's not. It's not a Wilder. Lennox Lewis had a better physique, and he wasn't ripped. And, you know, even guys like Riddick Bowe, he was never shredded. But I think he had an intimidating presence on some of his opponents because he was a big dude. He was big. He was really big. Big Daddy Bo was a big dude, especially in the early 90s where the heavyweights weren't as big as what we're seeing today. Tyson Fury, it looks like he eats too many pies. He handled Vlad. Vlad's got a very good physique, excellent physique. But look at Vlad. Vlad is 6'7", I believe, right? 17 stone, massive arms and chest, veins pumping out of his arms. He looks like he could just pick someone up and just rip parts of them off. But look how cautious he fights in proportion to how menacing his physique looks. That's because he knows any man can get hurt in there, including himself. No matter how big you are, no matter how big or ripped, he's had a long career. He knows that longevity is based on how little you take, not going in there with this big physique thinking you're entitled to win or whatnot. No. You got to look at the fundamentals, regardless of how brolic you look. That's why. It's only natural, though. It's only natural. In the animal kingdom, physicality and size is often used to work out disputes of dominance. Often a lot of fights between mammals don't come to fruition because they'll have a little muscle flexing contest. Somebody will see who's the bigger and, the smaller guy saying, okay, yeah, you got this. Now, let's not get this twisted. A lot of boxers who've done the rounds and things like that, amateur or pro, and have competed at a decent level, they're well past being threatened by someone's physique. You're going to have to show them they can fight, that they can box. You're going to have to show them, yeah? You're not going to win a round by flashing your abs or your pecs or anything like that. And I think Charles Martin will be in that category of that, he's not going to be intimidated by Joshua's physique. I wouldn't think not. But from what I saw at the weigh-in, it's not something that I think he can discount totally. You can't just say, that's not going to be a factor, that this guy is just in tremendous shape. Of course, Joshua's going to have to show him that he is champion material. But trust me on this, you can look at Joshua, Frank Bruno, any of the guys, any of the heavyweights with that cut, rip, big bicep thing going on. They've intimidated a whole load of their opponents just by looking at them. A whole load of their opponents lost the fight by just looking at their physical condition. Trust me. If Martin had, let's say, a shredded physique, he'd have more backers. Joshua is the favorite. I don't know what the odds are. Joshua is the favorite. Martin has had more fights. He has the belt. But Joshua is the favorite. Because people are looking into that physical angle that I'm talking about. They've looked into that. They see the body fat. And, a lot of times we see that. We say, well, the preparation doesn't look like it's what it should be. Not doing enough sit-ups. Not taking the diet serious. They're the obvious questions and the first questions that register when we see a guy who doesn't look like he's in top shape. They're the first things that register. And anyone says any different, they're a liar. I mean, if Martin had the same record and performed the same way he has in all of his fights, the only difference was, let's say he had Anthony Joshua's physique. Eddie Hearn, I'm not saying he wouldn't take the fight. I'm not saying that. But it made him think more. Trust me. That would be running through Eddie's head more than it would Tony Sims. Because Tony Sims is a boxing man. He knows it's not a bodybuilding contest. Eddie knows boxing, but, he's still on the other side of the divide from the people who are constantly in the gym, the fighter, the coaches, and whoever else. So part of him is still going to think like most people who are not gym rats in the gym constantly. Oh, he's a big guy in here. I don't know if I'm going to put my dude in there with him. You know what I mean? It's just psychological. A psychological edge is a psychological edge. A lot of this shit is predisposed into our psyches as animals and humans. I don't think Andy Ruiz has ever intimidated an opponent. I don't reckon he's intimidated anybody. He's probably shocked a couple, Like, yo, hey, you got some fast hands for a doughboy. And that's the only reason a few years back when George Foreman and a couple of people were saying Andy Ruiz is whatever. The only reason they said that was because of the visual illusion of this unathletic looking guy throwing some hands. It's an anomaly. So it became a talking point, which spilled over into him being talked about as a possible contender, which doesn't look like he is going to be right now. It's an illusion. It's technology to a degree. Yeah, he's decent for an unathletic looking guy, but you've got to control the conversation. He's not a contender. Yeah, he's got fast hands for that size, but he's not a contender. Now, if there was a championship for heavyweights with his physique, all about his size, he'd probably win it. But that's not the reality when we look at the bigger picture of the proper heavyweight landscape. Luis Ortiz is a really good heavyweight puncher, in my opinion. He's a good heavyweight puncher. But I still think there's a lot of heavyweights who think, because he looks a bit like a granddad in his face, and he doesn't have a perfect six-pack. But physically, he's not intimidating opponents. They're looking at the technique and the expertise and the raw, natural punching power. That's what they're looking at. But him physically, no, he's not intimidating no one. And I still believe, coaches do the eye test. They'll look at big guys who come in the gym. Oh, he's in shape. I wonder if he can fight. Then another guy looks a bit sloppy. I bet he can't fight. Now, he might get surprised either way. But, I don't care how much the coach is grounded into what's real in boxing. It's not a bodybuilding contest. I still believe some of that is in him too, to make them kind of judgments. Britain's had a history of heavyweights like that. Bombardier Billy Wells, 6 foot, how much he was, and he was in good shape. As soon as he fought international competition, mainly in Europe, he'd get knocked out. Same thing with Bruce Woodcock. Big dude, in pretty good shape. High KO percentage at domestic level. Put him in that international stage, you're knocked out. Get beaten up. Frank Bruno, took him 3 attempts. He had a great physique, a magnificent physique. Now, sometimes that physique and the fighting prowess go together. Like, I'd be a bullshit, man. He's dead. Like, there's one matchup what came up in fantasy match talk-ups is Ike versus Holyfield. And I just don't understand how people believe that Holyfield could beat Ike Ibeabushi. I just don't understand it. Right? Ike can box behind the jab and Ike can slug. Holyfield likes slugging, and he's fighting a guy who basically fights like him, but he's way more brolic. Are you mad? That'd be a bad fight horrible fight for Holyfield. Even if he wins, it'd be Ibeabushi would be a horrible fight for Holyfield, man. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, right? You better get one of them taller guys with a little bit of reach to do better. You know what I mean? Styles make fights. But Ibeabushi, he had a physique. He had a physique. But that physique wasn't just for show. He was physically strong. That was a physically strong dude. Ken Norton had a good physique, and he was a good pressure fighter, but the chin, despite the physique, the chin against the top power punchers, it just didn't align themselves. Frank Bruno, his chin, it wasn't. I don't think Frank didn't know how to defend himself when he got hit by big shots. And there's so many theories, like big muscles take up a lot of oxygen and make you tired. Norton had big muscles. He didn't used to puff out. Mike Weaver could do the 15. He went the distance loads of times with Dokes. Loads of times. I don't think it was Bruno's muscles that did him in his heavyweight challenges. He just didn't know how to defend himself when he got hit. He didn't take a knee. He didn't know how to clinch and stuff like that. So, maybe there is an argument that the muscles take up oxygen, but, I don't think, if I was to put it to someone who says it, that they couldn't theorize anything tangible to give their arguments some real credibility. That's just my opinion. Tua and Ibeaboshi set, was it the CompuBox record for the most punches thrown between two heavyweights? Ibeaboshi is as muscular as anything. He would have kept throwing them with the same volume for 15 rounds. And let's not forget, it wasn't a 15-rounder with anybody. David Tua was lighting him up. Them punches drain your battery. And he was still throwing volume back. And he won the fight. He landed the majority of the punches. Theorize that. What's your opinion? Do you think there are psychological advantages to be gained and lost between the physicality of the boxers, even before a punch is thrown? Let me know.